Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris, here to talk about Tennessee's matchup with Duke. That's in Orlando, 1:40 Central on Saturday. The Vols coming off a narrow escape against Louisiana. Tennessee was sort of in control the whole time. Louisiana made it interesting late. Duke just blasted Oral Roberts, a lot of team that people thought had a chance to pull the classic 5-12 upset because Oral Roberts has done that before, but Duke has really been on the heater lately, Blake, and really carry that over into the NCAA tournament with a pasting of Oral Roberts in its game on Thursday.
Yeah, won't be easy for Tennessee, that's for sure. I said coming into it, I thought Duke was a team that I thought was pretty good, but it was a matter of how you judge the ACC, and I think he wanted to kind of get an idea for sure that they were a team that could be reckoned with in this tournament. And I think, just as we always say, to me, that first game can tell you a lot about a team just because of how they approach it. And they came out as usual, kind of a trendy, underdog pick, the 12 and the 5, and Oral Roberts won 30 games, and everybody remembers kind of their success in the tournament, a couple years ago, and Purdue just came out and took it right to him, and didn't play around, and that's what I like to see from teams that have a chance to go far in the tournament. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot with this Duke team that I think that can present issues for Tennessee, just based on the fact that the Vols didn't necessarily look that way for the entirety of that game against Louisiana. They wind up winning by 3. But as we talked about in the reaction video, had several stretches in there where they just could not score the ball. And I think against a team like Duke, that could once again be a theme, just based on what the expectations are for the Blue Devils. So,
Yeah, Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler, all the things that we've been concerned about at different points popped up on Thursday night. The turnovers, I think Tennessee at one point was just turning the ball over almost every other possession. Defensively, he was the heart and soul of that team, and offensively, he was too. You saw the long scoring droughts that have become sort of a trademark. I hate to say that because I think a lot of Rick Barnes and his teams they're very good, but unfortunately, that's part of Tennessee's DNA too. Is just those offensive lapses. And all the things we were kind of concerned about with Tennessee. I thought that Tennessee would win that game against Louisiana without too much trouble. It won the game, but it had more trouble than I had anticipated, and that's what concerns me heading into the Duke game.
well, I mean, I think it's the same thing that concerns you. That's always concerns you with Tennessee. It's just it's the guessing game of when that next 5 to 6 minute stretch is going to come where they don't score. And at what point in the game does that happen? Does it come when they have a 10-point lead and they can, you know, they can afford something like that? Because maybe at worst, maybe it's a tie game. Or does it come when they're, down 5 and all of a sudden they can't score for 6 minutes, and then you look up and they're down 15? Against a team like Duke, that could absolutely happen. And I don't think Tennessee is the kind of team, and I feel like we've said this about several SEC teams. I don't know that I would love Tennessee having to play from behind, because they just offensively don't seem to be in a rhythm to where you will trust them to consistently knock down shots, especially from outside. And so, I mean, I know, right? Against Missouri, they hit 10 threes. Against Ole Miss, they hit 10 threes. But, I think that is something where they've really not shot it that poorly down the stretch, but it's just relying on, you know, I think just the numbers and the percentages, and trying to figure out again. I mean, because we talked about it, right? Like Vescovy had what, 3 points against Louisiana? Um, is that right? Yeah, 3 points. You know, Tyreek Key had 12 points, but hits 1 3. Like I said, they combined to go 4 16 in that game, from 3. And it's just, I think Duke is the kind of team to me that we talked about the numbers defensively, right? They are a very good defensive team, just like Tennessee is. But I think they're going to challenge Tennessee more on the defensive end than Louisiana could have, right? I mean, just the numbers tell you that Duke's a better defensive team. And, they did hold a very hot shooting Oral Roberts team to 51 points. You look at some of their games down the stretch outside of, I guess, the Miami game in the ACC tournament, which Miami's a top tier offensive team. Outside of that, I mean, look at what they did down the stretch. I mean, they held pretty much every other team under 70 points. And so I think you would fully expect this to be a more defensive minded game. I would be probably surprised if either team hits 70 here. And I just think it's that aspect of Tennessee is, will they run enough good offense to get themselves good shots? Because I don't think Duke's going to let them have good shots just, for fun and games. Like Duke's going to force them to take tough shots. It's just, can Tennessee get enough of those open looks, and can they hit enough of them? That's the question.
With Duke, different coach. Coach K is retired, but Duke gets 5 stars, McDonald's All-Americans, all those things. And Kyle Filipowski, excuse me, I've got a cold today. The 7-footers played really well. Jeremy Roach, who's a third-year player, has been very good for them too. Duke, again, came into this thing on a heater. Talk about the challenges you think the Blue Devils present above and beyond where you've already gone.
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, Filipowski's averaging almost a double-double, 15 and 9. I think someone that will surely present some issues just from that standpoint. I mean, when you look at it, and we talk about size in this game. I mean, he's 7 foot. I mean, really think about this, Chris. Like, Duke's going to start. I mean, we're talking about size here. Like,
Duke is the tallest team in the country in effective height at Ken Palm.
Well, they're going to start 7 foot and 7'1". Like, how many teams can start multiple 7-footers, right? And that's the challenge that Duke presents, because you've got Derek Lively, who's 7'1". So you've got 7 foot 230, 7'1", 230, and Filipowski and Lively. So I mean, it's almost unfair, like, to have that sort of advantage, but they do. And I mean, look, that's where you want to talk about guys that are going to get minutes. I mean, Tennessee, for the good part for Tennessee is that they obviously have some size inside. I mean, Plasti's 7'1", Adu's 6'11", Kamwa's 6'9". Josiah Jordan James can play big. We talked about that. I mean, Phillips is 6'8". So it's not like Tennessee doesn't have the size to combat some of those things. And that's where I think Tennessee can have success, is knowing that defensively, they've got some guys who can guard. I mean, that they will guard. Tennessee, let's not kid ourselves. Tennessee can play defense. And the same things we say about what Duke could do defensively against Tennessee, Tennessee could do the same thing against Duke, because that's where their strengths lie, is on the defensive side. But when you just look at how Duke, can attack teams, and they're another, stop me if you heard this before, Tennessee fans, because you hear it a lot in the SEC. But, Duke's a good offensive rebounding team. Why? Because they've got size. They've got guys who can get, extra opportunities. And so can Tennessee. Like, it's sort of the SEC model here of teams that just can really get some offensive rebounds based on their size. And so, I mean, Duke's just got, like you talked about earlier, just sort of if you look at the roster itself, I mean, Jeremy Roach and these guys that can do a lot of different things, and they've got multiple guys who can step up and score. It's a solid. I'm trying to look at kind of the numbers here down the stretch, but I mean, I think with Duke, you're talking, I mean, you've got at least 7, 8 guys who can give you, double-digit minutes and feel pretty good about it. But again, so can Tennessee. And so I don't know that these two, well, I don't want to go that far. I was going to say, I don't know if these two teams are that much different, but they are a little bit when you think about Duke offensively. But in a lot of areas, I don't know, defensively specific on that side of the floor, there are obviously a lot of similarities with these two teams, but it's just, to me, it comes down to, who do you trust more on offense? And I mean, I think we know what my answer is going to be on that, Chris. I think just right now, I think you trust Duke more on the offensive side of the floor. But it's just, Duke hasn't seen a lot of teams like Tennessee that at their best on defense can be the best defensive team in the country. So that's something else to think about. So yeah, it's a fascinating matchup. I know that, listen, a lot of people are going to just, without thinking twice, they're going to lean on Duke in this game, because if you see the differences in the first round games, Duke significantly more impressive than Tennessee was. But I do think I wouldn't just completely discount Tennessee's shot here, because they can't be good enough on the defensive side. They can force turnovers. and they can make things hard on Duke just like Duke can make things hard on them.
Yeah, we were at the SEC tournament covering it last week, and one thing that excuse me, stood out to me was just walking behind the scenes and being next to the players, how just big Tennessee is. Not necessarily height wise, but just how muscular those dudes are. That is a big physical team, and it's going to play like a big physical team. Okay, Blake. I'm not sure if I gave out the TV stuff earlier. This game, 140 Central in Orlando on CBS. Again, that's Saturday. The computers, the predictives have Tennessee is about a 4.2%. About a 4.2 point favorite. That's Ken Pomeroy, Bart Torvik, BPI, and Jeff Sagarin with a 66% chance to win. But I picked Duke in my Final Four before the tournament started, and I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't I don't even remember who I picked in my bracket. I think I think I ultimately went back to Duke. I changed my bracket so many times, but I think I picked Duke too, and I don't know that I really want to change that probably just based on what we saw from both teams. But like I said, I mean, this is an ultimate to me, this is all about Tennessee. And how many games have we said that in this season, right? It's just if Tennessee can score the ball, if they're able to hit shots from outside, if Vescovi gets to double figures, if Tyreek Key can get to double figures, Tennessee's got absolutely has a chance to win this game because they're good enough defensively to make this a grind for Duke. But it's just I think it's the same stuff we talked about how many years in a row now. It's the same theme. You just don't know when those stretches are going to hit where Tennessee cannot throw the ball into the ocean. And I worry about that against a Duke team that's pretty good, as we said, on the defensive side of the floor. And they came out on a mission against Oral Roberts that they were not going to let one of the more efficient offensive teams in the country score on them, and they held them to 51 points. Um, and so I don't love the matchup for Tennessee for that reason. I would have liked to see a much better offensive effort from Tennessee, but sometimes you get a bad offensive game out of the way first, and hey, maybe you find your rhythm in the next game. That's always possible. But I think you've got two teams that are seemingly in opposite directions right now in terms of their confidence, in terms of just their form and the way they're playing. I mean, as we've said, Chris, I mean, really, you go all the way back to the start of February, basically, right? For Tennessee. I mean, outside of a nice win against Alabama and a nice win against Arkansas, I mean, they don't have a ton to show for it since then. They lost a lot of games down the stretch, and even that Auburn win, right? That was a I don't think anyone won that game other than just the result. So in Knoxville, the first one that they played. So yeah, I'm gonna lean towards Duke here too. I think I trust them more offensively, and that's honestly just what it comes down to. If you got two teams defensively that are very similar, I just trust Duke more on offense right now, and I think that with the size that they present, I just think it's going to be a challenge for this Tennessee team that is seemingly just sort of hit a wall offensively. So.
Okay, we'll have you covered with recaps of every game involving SEC teams and previews of every game involving SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. Maybe the NIT too.
Maybe.
Who knows?
We got one team left.
Oh, colds, man. I've been pounding my airborne. I forget to do it for a few days, and I'm paying for it now.
If it's not me, it's you. Everyone knows it. Because one of us are always going to have, So
tag team being sick. Okay. Anyway, he is Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.